Welcome to the Everything Drug and Alcohol channel. We kindly request that you support us by liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing this channel. If you have any suggestions for potential guests, please email federaldrugtesting@gmail.com. Additionally, for FAA or HHS DER courses, we invite you to visit www.federaldrugtestingservices.com. I appreciate your interest in our work. This channel, however, does not officially endorse any products or services. Without further ado, let's get to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another session of the great YouTube channel of mine, the Everything Drug and Alcohol, again, which encompasses everything in the drug and alcohol industry, not just testing, but whether it's professionals, substance abuse, celebrities who've been on substance abuse, who are recovering from the rehab facilities, to great stories in the industry and those who covered them. So just make sure that you stay tuned and subscribe and like so that you can keep up on anything that's happening. And make sure you comment and email me if you have any questions or any recommendations of individuals you would love for me to have on the channel. And so coming up now, we actually have the NDASA, which is NDASA, and that's National Drug and Alcohol Screening Association.
That's right.
Right. Chairman, Chief XO, and he's also the President and CEO of Accredited Drug Testing and Secure Screenings, Ms. Jim Greer.
Great to be with you, Greg.
Great to have you. It seemed like I just saw you like 2 days ago.
We did. Yep, absolutely. We'll be seeing each other again in 2 weeks.
So, I know, right? Just small world.
One party after another party after another party.
That's good when you can keep seeing professionals in the industry over and over again.
That's right.
So welcome to the show. I know that you've been busy. I see that you're tanned. You're almost looking like me here. You keep staying on that boat of yours.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to buy a new boat, so I spent some time on the boat over the last couple of days here in Florida, and the weather's been beautiful.
I can tell because you wasn't that tan when I saw you.
No, that's right. I wasn't.
In Tampa. I was like, okay, now that makes sense. Well, I thank you for taking time off the boat and coming over and hanging out with me and my YouTube world.
Sure, I wouldn't have missed it.
I appreciate it. Well, welcome, and I'm not going to hold you up, but Jim, we go back to what, 2018? I think
we do.
Back
maybe even a little earlier than that.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things is that NDASA, what actually is that? Because there's a confusion in the industry, and some people who are listening may not even know what that is.
Well, NDASA is a nonprofit trade association representing the nation's drug and alcohol testing industry. With the merger of DASA into NDASA last year, we became the largest trade association representing our industry, the drug testing industry. So NDASA, Greg, does many things. First of all, it represents our members, which are laboratories, drug testing providers, medical review officers, substance abuse professionals. We have a wide range of members that are in NDASA, and we provide resources to them. We provide training programs, collector training, DER training, DOT oral fluid training. So we have a wide range of training programs under our umbrella of NDASA University, we call it. We also have an annual conference, which you mentioned this year. It's going to be in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Looks like it's going to be our biggest conference up to date. We have over 700 people attending this year. We have all of our exhibitors sold out. And during that annual conference, we have a keynote speaker that's relative to the industry. This year, we have the comedian and actor Tom Arnold. You might know him from the movies and also from the Roseanne show. He's had an addiction issue in the past. He's going to be our keynote speaker. And then we also are very involved in governmental advocacy. We had this past March a advocacy day in Washington, D.C., where we met with over 35 members of Congress and their staff to talk about issues affecting the drug testing industry. So we're really a resource for the drug testing industry, but we're also a trade association. So that's kind of what NDASA does in a nutshell.
And it's interesting. So DASA, can you explain them what was DASA?
Well, DASA was an organization that was founded back in the 90s that it was the Drug and Alcohol Testing Industry Association. Many people knew DASA over the years. I was a member of DASA. I was actually a board member of DASA. But DASA took a path that many in the industry could not accept. There were some financial irregularities. There were some other issues that board members and members as a whole became concerned about. And a small group of people, Joe McGuire, who you know is the NDASA executive director now, her and I got together and started putting a plan together to form another association. We brought together a small group of industry leaders who became our founding board members. And we were very focused on doing things differently and providing benefits to our members and electing a board of directors that actually governed the association, where DASA did not have that structure. And ultimately, at the end of the day, DASA folded. They ceased to exist, and all of their members merged last year into NDASA.
So the interesting part is because I remember hearing about DASA for the first time in 2015. I think I went to the conference in Vegas.
Right. I was
Right.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I first met you, all of you guys that were there. And then fast forward to New Orleans, and then uh, John Bergos was in my class in
Right.
in New Orleans, right? And so he says, "Hey, man, well, you should come to my party. We're having a we're having a party." And I was just
Coming
like,
out party, as they say.
I said, "Okay, I'll come over." And John is just, I just want to say hello, John. He just was an awesome individual, and he said he learned a lot in my class. So I really take
He
that.
does. He speaks very highly of you and your classes.
I really take that personally. And so I came over to the party not knowing exactly what was going on. And then I get over there and then I see you and Joe and other individuals announcing, was that the announcement of?
That was the formal announcement to the industry of the existence of NDASA. We had actually met about a month earlier in Washington, D.C., where we elected the initial board. We put a strategic plan in place, but New Orleans was where we formally announced. And if you remember, the room was packed. There was a lot of interest in
Okay.
NDASA.
Okay, Jim, so I got to ask you this. Who came up with that? And because I'm gonna have to change my words on this one, like who had the kahunas to say we are old board members of this association, but we're going to announce our new association at your association conference? Like that was,
Well,
I
I,
meant
I
to,
think
I always wanted to ask you this question.
I think it was kind of a joint effort, but I was probably the one who suggested it. But I think we all agreed, particularly Joe and I, that that would be a unique opportunity. We had others, Jan Corman and other members that and Dacia did not like it. They were very upset with us, but they had previously made some decisions that were not in the best interest of the industry or in the best interest of their members. So we felt that the time had come to tell the industry and the members what was really going on within Dacia.
In their
And
face,
huh?
in their face, not behind
In
their
their
back.
face. Yeah, in their face. We weren't going to dance around it anymore because they had taken some very inappropriate steps against their board, um, and and a slap in the face to their membership, but their membership just didn't know it yet. So we felt that it was appropriate to bring it out and let it all be transparent and let the horses run, as they say.
I can see why Andesa is successful. Because you guys didn't do anything shady. You didn't do anything in this
No,
transition. You didn't, whatever, you guys were so upfront that it was just like, oh my gosh. Like,
you know,
okay.
and I always felt, Greg, that uh, what happened last year with Dacia ceasing to exist was ultimately going to happen. It was it was it was part of my mindset. People joke with me that from day one I said Dacia must die, but what I really meant was that Dacia is going to destroy itself.
Yeah.
The way it was operating, the lack of transparency, the control structure. Um, it was ultimately going to cease to exist on its own, and we were just going to make sure that there was a place for the industry to go when that happened, and it ultimately did happen last year at our conference. The president of Dacia at that time and I sat down. It looked like Reagan and Gorbachev signing the documents uh, Resnick, but we had their board come up on stage and we had our board come up on stage, and her and I sat down and we signed the formal merger of Dacia into. And I have to also give some kudos to the leadership of Dacia at that time. Previous leadership groups probably would not have done that. They would have waited till the lights went out. But the leadership of Dacia last year, um, they were very progressive in their thinking, and they saw that where that things were heading, and they decided to get ahead of it and merge with us.
And it's interesting because I know some of those old board members who are now fellow board members with you guys, and I have to agree with you when they reached out to me a couple years ago, they were different. Their
Mm-hmm.
mindsets were different. The way they were structuring their board was different,
Mm-hmm.
and they just had a different mentality. So, how did that operate? Was that a part of the contractual agreement to bring some of the Dacia board members
Yeah.
over to you guys? And you guys got the pick of that board litter. Not saying that anybody else on there wasn't great, but who you have on there, I enjoyed them.
Well, we felt that it was my commitment to them that the membership of Dacia would feel that they were being welcomed and would have representation. So when we did the merger, the Andesa board was 19, but we increased the board temporarily to 24. So they were given 5 board seats on the Andesa board for a year, and then they had to run on their own from the membership election. But it was very seamless. It worked out very well. We had a great cooperative relationship between their leadership and myself and Joe McGuire and our leadership in Andesa. And 2 or 3 of their board members were reelected just this past March for a full term of 3 years on the Andesa board. So it really it took a lot of energy. There were some negotiations that took place over probably 3 or 4 months, but at the end of the day, it benefited the industry as a whole.
And it cuts down the confusion.
It does, yeah. And
You
you don't
know,
have to write 2 checks to 2 different conferences every year.
right. And it also not just cuts down the confusion, but the um when you get into certain organizations, they feel that they have to be neutral and they won't support either, especially when
That's
it
right.
comes to
Yeah.
the feds, right? And probably the labs and other entities that, okay, we can't show favoritism to one side or the other, so we're just going to pull back. So
Yeah, that's right.
how has those relationships changed now that it's just kind of you guys? I know they're SAPA, but they're kind of in their own
Yeah,
little
they've got
world
their
over
own
there.
little niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Greg, one thing when Endesa was first founded and we had our first conference, some of the bigger players were were not participating. They weren't sponsoring. They didn't know which way to go. And then slowly over the last 5-6 years, or really over the first 3 years, they started seeing that we were becoming successful. People were leaving DASA and coming to NDASA, and we started to be the go-to conference. So that it was twofold. One, there was still that hesitancy, as you mentioned, but ultimately you go where you think you're going to get the best bang for your buck,
Right.
or where you're going to reach the most people if you're the government. And we started seeing about 3 years ago, I remember telling the board that we're getting over that hump. We're seeing people coming now that didn't come in the first couple of years. We're seeing sponsorships like Quest and others. Although I might note, Quest was a founding sponsor. They believed in us before anyone else believed in us. And Quest was very supportive of us. And then other labs came on board. And you are right, now today, we're the go-to. Well, there is no other conference except SAPA, and they're in a little bit different world than we are. And just like when you see in Hershey, all the major labs are sponsoring, all the governmental agencies are coming. So it really has alleviated that concern that others had at the beginning of where do I go?
Right, because it was interesting. So let's go back to the beginning. Your first conference was what, in San Antonio?
San Antonio, Texas.
How big was that?
We had 150 people there.
I didn't make it to that one because I was still trying to figure you guys out. Like
Right, I
what's
got
going
you.
on? So I ended up coming to your second one, which was in Jacksonville. So let's talk about that one because that was a make or break time for the country, period, at that moment. Your Jacksonville one, because of COVID.
Yeah, Jacksonville was, you know, Jacksonville was very interesting, and I think part of the COVID issue that also made us get to where we are today is Joe McGuire and I had several conversations about what to do during COVID, and it was both her and I's and our board's position that we were going to continue to operate. We were not shutting down while others were running and hiding and closing up and not answering phones. We didn't do that. We kept going. We kept operating just like we normally did. And from a day-to-day perspective, I think that helped our association tremendously. But from the conference standpoint, it was very challenging because we had reached out. We got some good. We got Mike Lindell, who's the My Pillow guy, but he had an addiction issue in years past, and he became a major speaker for us. My wife got Miss America there because she was involved in pageants in years past. So we had a really great lineup of speakers, and it was an exciting time. Things were starting to happen. And then, Greg, I remember standing in the lobby of the hotel and watching Quest and LabCorp at the desk. They were at the desk to check in, and phones started going off. It was almost like a movie that you could see. There's a movie with Dustin Hoffman. I can't remember, where there's a disease spreading.
Outbreak.
Yeah, that's it. That's where he's a colonel. Outbreak. That's right. It was something to see in slow motion. One phone after another phone after another phone, and they're getting orders from their corporate offices to return and not check in. Don't set up your booth. Immediately, all employees will return to the corporate office.
Yeah.
So they were coming up to me and Joe and other leadership members saying, we have to go. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done to deserve this? Yeah. But when they left, others stayed. And Mike Lindell, our keynote speaker, stayed. Miss America still came, because the larger companies were taking action, but the rest of the business world had not caught on yet.
Right. And
we were able to have a conference. We probably had maybe 50, 60 people leave, but we still had over 200, pushing 300. So when it was all said and done, Greg, it was a successful conference, but it was very challenging.
Yeah. So let's go back because I do remember that because I people were leaving my class. I
Right.
had like ended up with three people remaining in my class. Because I remember Chet Stevenson being there from the FAA and we were sitting there talking and then he had to leave, whatever. So it was challenging, but I'm glad to see that you guys kind of came out of that because
We did.
some people could have folded just in its entirety during that time period. So if I were to take you back to the beginning, did you and when did you envision Endesa or how did that come to fruition? Like was that something that you woke up with or you had dreams about? And I was like, how did it actually manifest itself?
Well, I think the conduct and the behaviors of Dacia um, toward the end of our boardship and Joe McGuire's boardship and others um, made us so angry that we were able to turn that anger into utilizing our business experience and our commitment to doing things in life that Joe McGuire and I talked about it quite, as Dacia was doing the things they were doing, Joe McGuire and I were on the phone constantly. And um, and at the same time, her and I were talking, other people on the board and in the industry were getting just as angry as we were. So I think the best thing to describe is Joe and I were able to bring a group together and organize that group and meet in Washington, D.C. We met in Washington, D.C. in a conference room, and we had 6, 7 people there, and we laid out our vision for forming an association. And the same day that we formed it, uh, because there was no organization yet, we made each member there an interim board member. Um, and we were off to the races. And so, it was number one, the industry is not being well served, and there's a need. There clearly was a need. And then, second of all, the behaviors of Dacia was so outrageous that something had to be done. And the people that Dacia did it to, I'll just conclude, were not the type of people that just roll over and let people do things to them.
Right.
Other people, I remember, Greg, some people saying, oh, let's just move on. Let's just try and get along. Let's just do whatever Dacia tells us to do, and and um, and just accept what they're doing. And that wasn't me, and that wasn't Joe McGuire, and that wasn't others either. We weren't just going to do that. Well, there were others on phone calls that said, you know, um, can't we all just get along?
Yeah, that wasn't. So here's the interesting thing with you guys having that mindset. Had you not had that mindset, they're going to fold inevitably. So we would have been left with no association to this date that we know of had you guys not had held ground to keep moving forward with your vision.
Well, I think you're right, and what would have transpired was, and what ultimately did transpire, is there would have been an attempt, like there was by the board of directors of Dacia, to try and put it back on its right course and get control of it. But we found out very quickly through legal counsel that the Dacia board of directors really had no governing authority at all. It was more of an advisory board, and it was privately owned by an individual that no one knew at the time, and and that individual could ultimately, at the end of the day, do whatever he wanted to with Dacia. And so, I would like to say that the board would have put DASA on its proper course to fix the deficiencies it had, but we found out very quickly we didn't have that ability. There was no authority that the board of directors had. In fact, you probably know, we were all removed by the owner of DASA when we tried to exert our authority as a board of directors. So ultimately, you're absolutely right. It might have taken longer, but I think what would have happened once the industry became aware of the financial irregularities and other issues, they would have stopped giving money to DASA, and eventually DASA would not have been able to operate.
Right. And there's so much behind the scenes, but I'm not going to go into all that stuff.
Sure.
So
there's so much more. There's so much more.
We're just gonna go ahead and leave that in the back. So on to some more positive things. So what would you say has been some of NDASA's most notable accomplishments?
Our most notable accomplishments, I think, number one is our annual conference. I have truly been so impressed with the conference committee and the people that put that together every year, and how it's just gotten better and better and more well organized, and great speakers, and great educational seminars. And I really have been impressed about our annual conference. I would also tell you, Andesa University, bringing together all of the industry training programs that are needed out there, like collector training and DER training and real suspicion training, and putting those all in one place where the industry can find and take those courses. That's been a great highlight of our association. And now we're moving into another area that has always been my objective, and that is governmental advocacy. I believe our industry has lacked representation in Washington, D.C. and in the state capitals. And that's why we've seen some of the things happen from a legislative standpoint, because there's never been anyone from the drug testing industry there speaking up. And we have formed a PAC, a political action committee, where we make political contributions to candidates that understand and support our issues. And we are now going to have an annual lobby advocacy day in Washington, D.C. every year. And I think that's one of our next great achievements. And then I'll just add one last thing, that I think our Council of Laboratories, this is not a well-known part of NDASA's day-to-day activities, but years ago, Greg, there was a true disconnect between the labs talking to each other. And I can remember 5 years ago sitting in a room with one of the labs and talking about this idea of having a council of laboratories where every quarter all the labs would come together and talk about issues. And this lab leadership said to me, that will never happen. Laboratories don't like each other. They don't talk to each other. They're in their own individual worlds. And I said, well, how do we know? We've never done it. And our first council of laboratories had 3 labs on it. We had over 35 labs. All the major labs participate now. All the smaller labs are participating. And it gives each lab the opportunity to talk about what we see coming down the pike that's going to affect the entire industry. It also allows a method of communication between the collection sites, the collectors, and the labs that has never existed before. So at those meetings, we're able to tell the labs what the collection sites are seeing, and the labs get to explain why things happen a certain way to the collection sites. So I would tell you, one of the other things I'm very proud of is the Council of Laboratories.
So those were NDASA's. What is Jim's most notable accomplishment as chairman? What would you say personally? The reason I'm asking you this, before you answer that, the reason I'm asking you this is because we had a conversation in Tampa, at the IFDAT when you said that you implemented a time period for chairmans, right? That you
Mhm.
implemented a time
Yeah,
period,
2 terms, 2 terms.
2 terms. So can you explain that? And the reason I'm asking is because you're going to step down soon, right? Or your
One
time
year
limit.
from now, 2025 will be my
So
last conference.
what would be your legacy as
Well, I think my legacy, to be honest with you, that I'm most proud of is the Dacia merger. That was always something that I felt needed to happen for the industry. But you know that was done by a lot of people. But I am proud of the Dacia merger and being able to provide the leadership to get that done. I think one of the other things that I'm most proud of is the cohesiveness of our board of directors and my working relationship with our executive director, Joe McGuire. Her and I have worked in a partnership relationship since the founding of this organization. And um, we've had, I've had many people work for me over the years, and I respect her position as the executive director. She has a job to do. She respects mine as the chairman. Um, you know, and also the relationship with our board of directors. I have enjoyed working with them over the last 6 years. Certainly, every board is a little different, but we haven't had any blowups. We haven't had any real arguments. We might have differences of opinion, but that's how a board works. They've been very supportive of me as chairman, and I believe a good chair supports the board. Um, so I just think the success when I hand these keys off. I told my wife one day, I said, I think I'm going to be like a father with the kid driving off to college. I'm going to hand the keys to somebody else and they're going to take it to the next level. And you mentioned the 2 terms. When we founded this thing, I felt that there were 2 positions that should not be able to serve more than 2 consecutive terms. One was the treasurer,
right?
because I think new eyes need to come in, and I think new ideas and new leadership needs to come in. So I will have served 6 years as chairman, and then a year before that as the advisor to the board. And I'll still be a member of the board because the past chairman sits on the board. But I'm looking forward to seeing what comes down the pike a year from now and who gets elected. And we'll actually be electing a chairman-elect at this meeting in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
So what are you personally looking for in the next chairman?
I'm looking for someone who has the time to do the job, someone who realizes that this is not a ceremonial position. We wrote these, we created the structure of this organization so that the board had a direct conduit of control over the association, and that was the chairman. So the chair has to have the ability and the time to do the job. I think has to have the ability to work with the board, um, and to work with the staff. And I'm looking for somebody. I'm hoping, and because I get to cast a vote, that someone doesn't have come in with preconceived ideas or an agenda, um, and simply wants to build on the successes that our association has had over the last 6 years. Um, and I believe we're going to have that person, whoever it might be.
Whoever that might be. One more thing about Andesa Dacia before we move on to the other side of you. Um, you have Dacia members, previous Dacia members. What uh, advice would you give them who are probably in limbo with Dacia, still trying to figure out what's going on with the that haven't kind of been pulled into the fold yet of the merger, or just now kind of figuring that out?
Well, I mentioned everybody that was a member of Dacia at the time of the merger, their membership transferred automatically over to Andesa, for whatever term was left on their Dacia membership. We didn't charge anybody any money. We just moved them on over. I think the most important thing that members see now is I think they're starting to see that we operate differently. We return phone calls, we answer calls, we keep the members involved by our communications. But I think the one thing that I would encourage all the members, not just the DASA members, is get involved. We have 7 or 8, if not more, functioning committees that are actually meeting monthly. We have a mentorship program. We have an accreditation and certification committee. We have a governmental affairs committee that everybody likes to get on. There are so many committees, and we have a conference committee. And these are not just committees in name. These are hard working, dedicated people. And if you want to get involved in your industry and get involved in NDASA, there's so many opportunities that we provide. And I'm hoping that those members of DASA that were there toward the last couple of years that were frustrated about so many things are seeing that it's a totally different world. And I hear that from former members of DASA that, my goodness, you return phone calls, you return emails, you get training certificates out. So I think that most people have seen that it's really night and day. But the other last thing I'd say, as I mentioned, is get involved, join a committee.
All right. And I would hear that as well, because even on the federal side, when DASA kind of went under, they kind of just went in limbo. They wasn't really sure what was going on. So I did get a call yesterday, which is ironic that I know that in my HHS class, so there will be some feds attending from CDC, from HHS and SAMHSA, who will be attending my course or whatever. But that'll give them a chance to kind of see, the bigger overall picture now, of the growth of NDASA. So that should be exciting to see them come back into the fold as
Yeah,
well.
I think so. Very much so.
So let's talk about a different side of you.
Okay.
Let's talk about your accredited drug testing and secure screening side of you.
The one that pays.
The one that the one
one
that
that
pays.
the one that's going to help send my kids to college. That one.
There you go. How many kids you got? 3?
I have 5. Yep, that's it. That's it.
That's a
That's
that's a lot.
that's a lot. That's right.
In today's age, not from back in the day. That was
Right.
nothing. Well, congratulations. So how many you have in college?
Well, I have 2 out. I have from 28 to 11, believe it or not. And I always say that's what you get when you marry a younger wife. And my wife is younger than me, but we have one up 28 who is a graduate of Florida State, is in New York. We have another one who's 25 who's going to the University of Scotland,
Wow.
Edinburgh. She lives in Scotland. She's going to university over there. She'll be graduating soon. And then I have an 18-year-old who's graduating from high school this week, and he's off to the University of Miami. And then I have a 15-year-old big football player like you and me. He wants to go to Florida State. And then I have an 11-year-old girl at home who's daddy's girl. Although
Yep.
each one of them argue when they're with me of who's really daddy's girl, the older girl or the younger girl. So,
You should
I
put them
just love them
in
both.
order ranking. Every time you see them, it's like, oh, you my number one this week.
That's exactly right.
You my number one this week. So what I'm going to do is let's pull up. I'm going to share the screen and we're going to pull up Accredited, and let's talk people through what you guys actually do over here. So, all right.
That's it.
So here, which is very interesting, because I've been to your website and actually had a chance to be a part of some FAA audits of your company as well. So you're taking the reason why I wanted to pull this up, Jim, is to let everybody know that you're not just a person who is over this board of NDASA, like you come with knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I became involved in the drug testing industry in 1993 when I started with another gentleman. Um, Florida drug screening. But soon to be 11 years ago, I founded Accredited Drug Testing, and I wanted to have a company that, number one, was very focused on customer service, because sometimes our industry is not as focused on customer service as it should be, and wanted to offer a wide range of services so that you didn't have to go anywhere else. If you needed to join a consortium, or if you needed a clinical test, or you needed background checks, or if you needed training. And my first month back years ago, we did 6 tests. So I was a little worried. I told my wife that we may have to choose a new profession, but we did over 6,000 last month. And that's just one specific type of test. We do hundreds and hundreds of other types of tests beside just that one. And we have over 5,000 people in our consortium, from truck drivers to, we have an airline consortium, we have a U.S. Coast Guard consortium. And we schedule tests nationwide. I have a call center of about 40 people that sit with headsets on all day long, and they take calls throughout the country for drug and alcohol testing and other types of services. So my call center gets over 1,500 calls a day from people throughout the country needing a test. So this company has been very successful. I'm very proud of the team that I have. You mentioned John Bergos. John has been with me since 2003. He was with another company I had for many years called Regulatory Compliance Services. And he's been with me since 2003. And we both look a lot younger there, as you can see, and a little skinnier too, I might add. But I'm very proud of this company. It continues to grow. We're branching off into all kinds of areas these days. I have a meeting when we get off of here of some new services we're going to be offering. We're also working very closely with i3, which is one of the scheduling platforms, a great scheduling platform throughout the U.S. to schedule drug, alcohol tests, and other types of services. So we work very closely with i3. And that's kind of what accredited drug testing does.
So when you do your training and your collections, and to the best that you can control, uh, you offer the Spanish version as
We do.
well.
Yep, we sure do. And we have about 9, I believe it's 9 bilingual staff members here that when they get truck drivers that speak Spanish, or they get anyone else who speaks Spanish, those calls are transferred to those employees.
Right, and that's very unique in its entirety across the board. Because that is one of my complaints, even when I do federal testing, is how are you making sure that they understand, this information. So I wanted to kind of make sure I point that out, because that's very important. And also, you're the president of this. So how did I won't say how did this come about, but I wanted to ask you, what has been your biggest accomplishment with Accredited?
Oh, I think just first of all, putting together a good team. I'm very, very proud of the management team I have. I'm very proud of the receptionist who sits out here in the corporate office. We're very, very big on training here. Matter of fact, Tuesday morning, we have our monthly staff meeting, and we have a lot of items on the agenda to go over training. So I really am proud of the fact that we're very innovative in our thinking. We're never standing still. We're always talking about where we want to be a year from now, where we want to be 6 months from now. And I'm very proud that every year we have grown since the founding. And we're never standing still. We're always moving, and some things don't work out. I'm an entrepreneur. I love ideas. I'm an idea person. I always say if you want to get down in the weeds about drug testing, John Bergos is the guy to talk to. And I mean that with the greatest deal of respect. But if you want to talk about the big picture, how do we sell it? How do we market it? How do we do this? That's what I love to do. And the combination, I might add, I talked about Joe McGuire earlier, but the combination that John Bergos and I have had for many, many years has been a well-oiled machine. I might say I come up with the idea and he takes it and runs with it. So I just think never standing still has been a proud moment for me here at Accredited.
So being a part of NDASA, or previously, when you guys were with DASA, you're ahead of a lot of individuals just because you are lobbying. You are at the lobbying. You're dealing with, that other side of the industry. And how has that helped and converted over into your accredited business?
Well, I think, knowing what's going on is most important. I mean, beside John and Cecilia, who's our business development director, keeping track of what's going on in Washington, what's going on in the state capitol, what's happening legislatively, what's happening from a regulatory standpoint, because we are connected like that from a governmental affairs standpoint or an advocacy standpoint, we're able to come right back to the company and prepare for what's coming down the pike because we were connected, and a lot of people aren't. I mean, right. There's a lot of people that are oblivious to what's happening. And, you still call collection sites up and ask if they do a DOT test. And sometimes they turn and yell to somebody, do we do DOT testing? I mean, it's comical that in many cases, people are not connected with what's happening out there. And Accredited is. We're very focused on keeping our eyes and ears open.
Yeah, because I do remember being somewhere in Pennsylvania auditing, and they actually were utilizing you guys, and they were having some issues with some collections or something. And I said, hold on. And I just, emailed John. He picked up the phone and called me, and he handled it, right then and there. And, and there's a lot who don't have that type of, relationship where people can act. You're going to get somebody to answer the phone, right? And I think that's probably why you are, as the chairman for NDASA, the way you are with them, the way you handle your company, is that somebody's going to pick up this phone. We're going to talk to you. We're going to deal with these things head on. And that's just a good thing to have in this industry.
Well, one thing, Greg, occasionally people, we do thousands of tests a month, and not everybody's happy.
No.
You can't make everybody happy. But, one thing here in my office is if I see an email or a comment of something that relates to customer service or something that relates to the response of this company, I get up from my desk immediately and go out there and talk to the supervisors of that department. I don't blow off comments. I don't blow off complaints. A lot of times it's not a legitimate complaint or a legitimate question or comment, but they will tell you, and it probably is to their frustration, that I immediately want an answer to why this happened, to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. Now, like I say, many, many times, I saw one the other day, to be honest with you, somebody gave us, most of our ratings on Google are 5 stars, but someone gave us a rating of a 1 star, and it related to a collection site. So I'm sitting at home, I saw it, I looked at it, came in the office the next morning, I met with the management team as I do each morning, and I found out that they went to the location after it was closed, and they were mad at us that they got there after the location was closed. So, like I say, sometimes many times it's not legitimate, but whenever there is something that we need to improve upon, we react to it immediately.
Yeah. And that's it's something awesome to have because, in the, how it goes in this industry, what's going on in these individuals' world is important to them in that moment.
That's right.
To you or me or whoever, it's just like, okay, it's just another day, another question. But to them, it's like they can't function and move forward without dealing with it in that real time, moment. So, all right, I know you have other stuff to do. And I'm glad that, I had an opportunity to get one-on-one with you because you do have this stature about yourself when you're out and about that, like you just got that, I don't want to call it the RBF, but like you should, but you know what I'm talking about, Jim. Like you just have this no nonsense and you're just in business mode. So it's just nice to see you not in business mode, to say. And he does smile a lot, guys. You should see him after the day of the conference is over with and the party begins. He does come down a little bit. He does.
I always say we have serious business to do, but we can have fun doing it.
There you go. There you go. So what would you like to leave everybody with?
Well, I think the most important thing I'd like to say to everybody out there is, first of all, thank you, Greg, for giving this format for myself and others to talk to the industry about important issues that are affecting us. I would say to anyone in the drug and alcohol testing industry, join NDASA. It's not that expensive. You're going to get many, many benefits from it. You're going to see that it's worthwhile. And we would like to get to know you. We'd like to help you if we can in any way. And as I always say to everybody, it's been a great privilege to serve as chairman of NDASA. And it will be one of the highlights of my professional career. And I thank everyone out there that I've had the opportunity to meet or voted for me or supported me as chairman. But there's a lot of things coming down the pike, as we all know. Legalization of marijuana, or DOT oral fluid. We need to be prepared for that. We need to make sure we're aware of what's happening with those issues. And being a member of NDASA will do that for you. So go to our website, www.ndasa.com. And there's still time to come to Hershey, Pennsylvania and get some chocolate in a couple of weeks.
I'm getting my chocolate.
That was good.
I'm getting my chocolate. And until then, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you very much, Greg.
All right, have a good one, Joe.
You too.